Alfred Ngaro.
Mr Chair, I take a call on this bill, the Social Security Extension of Young Person Services Remedial's Matters Amendment Bill in committee stage. Mr Chair, well, it's good to hear you listening, the remedial matters, but Mr Chair, the joy of being in opposition is that all risk, no responsibility. That's what it is. And it's easy for them to turn around and say, it's almost like the ad about the moss removal, the spray and walk away. In other words, how about we just pay and walk away? And so you've heard the opposition in regards to this bill. What they want to say is that let's just pay and walk away. And when they turn around and talk about the responsibility of this government, they only need to look back at the 9 years of a Labour Greens government. Let's talk about your track record. Let's talk about paid parental leave. Did it happen when the opportunity was there? No, it didn't. Let's talk about housing, warm and dry. Did it happen under a Labour Greens government? No. That's right, 50,000 houses in 9 years? Come on, not exactly a track record you can be proud of. Why? Because you supposedly took responsibility. So it's a bit rich to turn around to be sanctimonious and say, guess what? It's not about the cost, because when you're in opposition, it's all risk, no responsibility, pay and walk away. Mr Chair, these guys want to hear about the committee stage, so let's do a bit of research. Let's see if these people have done their homework. Productivity Commission, 2011, talked about the social investment approach. Guaranteed there wouldn't be many that have read that report. But if you take the time, read the report, what does it say? This is what it talks about. There are four things that are really important when they talk about that are high risk of those that are inside our welfare system. And inside of that, they say this, and that reporter says this. Number one, intervention needs to happen early. That's right. We'd all agree with that, right? Second thing they said, you need to target your approach. So what is this bill doing? Number one, the intervention is early. It's extending the age of eligibility, okay, from 18 to 19-year-olds. Why? Because the Productivity Commission said, if you want to make the greatest difference, go early, not late. That's what this government is doing. Second thing, it said this. Productivity Commission said report, target your focus and your resources that make the greatest difference. You won't know that because you haven't read it, but that's exactly what it's saying. So if we were to say, as the government, to be responsible for the resources that we have, we go early, we target where it's most needed. Mr. Chair, this is what's making the difference. So for 18 and 19-year-olds who are vulnerable, who are at risk, why would we not turn around and say, we're going to be responsible for this? I tell you the reasons why. Because in 9 years of a Labour government that I am working in the community had experience, this is what it did. Pay and walk away. In other words, don't take responsibility to ask the hard questions. Mr. Chair, this government is doing this. We're not afraid to face up to ask the hard questions. That's right, you're going to get up and you're going to say, this is what we've done. This is what this government is doing. It's asking the hard questions, and this is what we're doing. When we talk about predictive profiling, it's asking the questions as this. If you are at risk, if you're a young teenager, a young parent, so what does the research show us? It shows us this. If you go early, you stay longer. In other words, on average, the question is this. If you're an 18-year-old and you're a young teenage parent, you go into the welfare system, how long do you stay? Oh, that's right, you don't know, it's 13 years. That's on average. If you're 20 years old and you go into the welfare system, how long does the research say? Oh, that's right, you haven't read the research, 20 years. Because if you'd read it, if you'd understand it, you'd be able to stand up and give a reasonable rebuttal, okay? Well, then stand up and let's hear the speech. Because guaranteed, you haven't done your homework. So you stand up, sanctimonious about what we're doing, but guess what? Guess what? We're making a difference where it really counts. For these young 18 and 19-year-olds, if they're vulnerable, they deserve to get the support that they need to make sure that, number one, they go into eligibility of work opportunities, of training. This is what this bill is doing. Mr. Chair, it's interesting that they can stand up, they can talk about all of this, but what this government is doing, investing in the right places for young people. And Mr. Chair, there's a little bit of...
Point of order.
Wide-ranging and robust debate, but the member hasn't spoken about anything substantive in the bill once during his contribution.
The members, the committee stage is to review the evidence that was brought before the Select Committee. The member has referred several times to papers that were brought before the Select Committee. Don't talk while I'm on my feet. You know the rules. So the member is actually doing exactly what he's called to do within the committee stage. and actually sat through a number of speeches where a number of allegations were made. I'm not surprised that the member quite vociferously hits the ball back over the net. I also noticed that the other side of the House is not being giving to the government member the courtesy that was extended to them. So, you know, he's got another 33 seconds. Unless he wants another call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, as I've talked about the bill, eligibility from 18 to 19-year-olds, if the member was listening, they'd also too realise that too. Mr. Chair, what is important, the wraparound support of a youth coach, parenting and budgeting service, support to engage in education and training. So how many teen parent units have those members been to? How many young people have you walked alongside to see that they would make a difference? I tell you what, guaranteed, if you put it out, your hand on heart, I'm not sure if there'd be many. Why? Because, Mr. Chair, this is what this government is doing. We're the party for the people. We're getting out there and meeting the needs that they have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.